So in today's lecture, first, before we start our lecture, let's have the reminder from the lecture we have taken before. In the previous lecture, we had the fact that language processing is mind internal, which means that the linguistic processing cannot be observed, it cannot be seen. For example, just before I speak now, you cannot see my brain. How does it combine words? How does it link words together? And as you listen to me while I'm speaking, there's nobody who can see, except of course, except by Allah. But there's nobody who can see the brain. How does it breaks down the sentence, or breaks down the discourse that you're listening to? So there's no one who can see from humans. There's no one who can see how does the brain combine words together as someone is listening to someone else. Of course, as I'm speaking now, if you look at my brain, you're not going to be able to see words which are brought together in order to form sentences. This is what we mean by the fact that language processing is something which is hidden. It cannot be seen. So therefore, psycholinguists analyze linguistic behavior instead. So since we cannot see the brain as it brings language, as it brings words together, we cannot see it. So instead of just saying that we cannot do anything, we still can observe the linguistic behavior. So this is a reminder from the previous lecture. In today's lecture, we're going to see how are vocabulary items organized in the mind. The second thing we are going to see is the tip of the tongue phenomenon. What does it mean? The second thing is, what explanations does it offer? So we have this tip of the tongue phenomenon, and in Arabic we have the same. We can say طرف اللسان على طرف اللساني, which means sometimes you find yourself unable to remember a word, although you can remember some details about it, as we are going to see in the next few slides. So let's start with the first thing which we are going to discuss in today's lecture, which is comparison between the dictionary and the brain. Here we have two pictures. The first is for the human brain. The second is for a dictionary. So as you know, if you open a dictionary, you will find that lexical entries, that words are organized alphabetically. So first they start with words starting with the letter A, then they move to words starting with the letter B, etc. In your mind, words are organized a bit differently. So let's read what we have here. Lexical items are organized alphabetically in a dictionary. In the brain, however, vocabulary items are organized differently. So how are vocabulary items stored inside your brain? How are they stored inside? We know in the dictionary that they are organized alphabetically, but what about the brain? What about your brain? How are words stored? How are words saved inside your brain? So we have the phenomenon which I've talked about already, which is the tip of the tongue. So what does it mean? It means remembering some details about a word, but not the word itself. So sometimes you'll find yourself able to remember some details about a word, but you cannot remember the exact word you are looking for. And this happens frequently to every one of us. This is a phenomenon which happens almost every day to us. You find yourself able to remember some details about a word, but not able to remember the word itself. And this is also true for second language speakers like us, like me and you. Sometimes we remember some details about an English word, but we are not able to remember the word we are looking for. So we go back to the dictionary, we go back to the internet, and sometimes we ask our friends, we give them some details. Do you know the word which starts with something? Do you know the word which means so and so? This is because, and this is something which is highly frequent in our daily life. So let's have the question. Let's read the question we have. Have you been in a situation where you could remember the meaning of a word, its sound, how does it sound? Sometimes you remember the first syllable or the last syllable of a word, its first letter, or other words it rhymes with, but you cannot remember the word you're looking for. You cannot remember the word itself. This is called the tip of the tongue. Now we know the meaning of the term tip of the tongue, but what does it mean to psycholinguists? What are the explanations does it offer? Alright, so, okay. Let's move to the next slide, which is again a similar situation to the tip of the tongue. Similarly, have you been in a situation where you could remember some details about a word you came across, but you were not sure what does the word mean? For example, you are watching a movie and you listen to one of the actors saying eagle. Okay, now you have heard of the word eagle before. You know exactly that the word eagle is a bird. Okay, that the word eagle means a kind of birds. You know that the word eagle is about a kind of predator verbs. Predator birds are those who kill other birds or other animals. So you know that the word eagle means a bird, and it's a predator verb, but you cannot remember the exact meaning of this word, eagle. Okay? And this happens to us frequently as second language speakers. Sometimes we come across a new word, we have heard this word before, we know that it is somehow linked to other words, but we cannot remember the exact meaning of the word. This is happening to us on a regular basis. Okay? What does the tip of the tongue phenomenon why does the tip of the tongue phenomenon often happen to us? So why does this happen to us? This is because lexical entries are grouped in the brain as a complex network according to the sound and meaning. So let's go back to the dictionary, which we have had in the previous slides. In the dictionary, the words are organized alphabetically. First they start with words starting with A, then they move to words starting with B. In the mind, in the brain, it's a bit different. In the brain, it is organized as a complex network, which means, if we look at this slide, so this is how your brain looks at words. This is how your brain organizes words. So let's take the word animal, for example. There are words which are related to the word animal, like fish, like birds, for example, penguin. These are words which are related to animals. So your brain stores words in a way which is a bit similar to the network we have here on the screen. There are words relations. So for example, your brain recognizes that the words pigeon and penguin have something in common, which is they are both birds. Your brain, for example, is able to tell that the words lion and tiger have something in common. They are both animals, they are both hunting animals. Your brain is able, a third example, your brain is able to tell, for example, that teach and study have something in common. So your brain recognizes words are grouped as grouped entities. So they are not separate to each other like what we have in a dictionary. Words are not separate. Your brain recognizes words as groups, not as separate words. Alright? So we have two kinds of lexical or vocabulary experiments. These two kinds of vocabulary experiments are known as, first, lexical decision, the second is priming. In these two experiments, we study how vocabulary are processed, how to understand vocabulary. So let's look at the things which these two experiments offer to us as psycholinguists. The first thing is how are entries, that is words, linked together. How are words linked together? So these two experiments tell us how are words linked together. The second thing is how are entries accessed. So how do you access the words in your brain? What information is contained in an entry? What information is contained in a word? So as you are speaking, for example, you are bringing words together from your brain. How do they link together? What other information are contained in the words you are recalling as you are speaking? These two experiments are going to be discussed in detail in the next lecture, which is lecture number 4. In the meantime, let's do our exercise as promised in the live lecture, the live session. I promised to give an exercise following each lecture, just to practice what you have learned. So let's look at the exercise we have here. In psycholinguistics, one thing we can learn from the tip of the tongue phenomenon is that, and here we have 4 options. And remember, always when you do multiple choice exercise, always remember to read all of the options, because sometimes you read the first option and it is right, and you click it or choose it, but if you complete the reading the multiple choice items, you will find that for example B and C are also correct, and D says all of the above. So if you chose A, which is right, and did not read the rest of items in the multiple choice exercise, you are going to answer in a wrong way, because although you know the answer, but because you did not read the rest of choices, you did not complete, or you did not do it right. Because if you complete it, you will find that at the end there's an option which says all of the above. Okay, now let's read the lexical, or the items we have. First, lexical entries are easy to forget. So what is the meaning of, or what can we learn from the tip of the tongue? Do we learn that lexical entries are easy to forget? Or lexical entries are organized alphabetically in our mind? Or entries are grouped in the mind according to their meaning and sound? Or entries are stored independently in the mind? Okay, before I give you the answer, I will give you some time to think of the available choices, to think deeply of the available choices, to remember what you have taken in today's lecture, and try to choose one of these. So if you chose A, your answer is wrong. Why? Because lexical entries, of course lexical entries are easy to forget, but this does not have anything to do with the tip of the tongue phenomenon. If you chose B, your answer is wrong, because lexical entries are not organized alphabetically in our mind. They are organized alphabetically in the dictionary, but not in our mind. If you chose C, entries are grouped in the mind according to meaning and sound. You are right, because as we have seen in this figure, that the lexical entries are grouped in the mind as being related to each other. So as we can see, animals, we have birds and fish and penguin and shark, they are related to each other. Alright, so if you answered C, your answer is correct. If you did not answer C, this means that you may need to view this lecture again if you did not choose the right answer. So as I said earlier, in the exam, because in the exam we are going to have multiple choice items, and in other exams as well, always read the 4 available options. Do not read one and say, okay, I found the answer, that's it. No, just read everything available, because sometimes we have A and B, sometimes we have none of the above, sometimes we have all of the above as one of the available choices. So you have to read all of the items in the multiple choice exam. Read all of the items so that you are sure that you have answered correctly. Alright, so this brings us to the end of today's lecture. Thanks very much for listening, and see you in the next lecture.